Hello, everyone. All right, we're on week 2, day number 5. Today, we're going to be focusing on understanding obstacles, and it looks like the sun is going to be in my eyes, so you might see me squinting a little bit. It's one of the benefits of facing south towards the winter. The sun is hitting you most of the day, so I guess I'm getting my vitamin D. So what are we doing today? We're going to be talking about understanding obstacles, and this, frankly, is one of the most important things as a leader and manager that we can do for our team members, and taking that understanding and actioning it. And I'll go into why that's important. So pay attention today. And if you're managing a team, this is one of the habits I strongly encourage you to invest in when we talk about things like time quality and that time quality for your team members. This information, this understanding that you can then leverage and make adjustments and improvements for your team members is something that can have a significant impact on your team's ability to produce results and have a better working experience. And in turn, that impacts your results and also your leadership brand. So what is the purpose of understanding obstacles and those obstacles of your team members specifically? We'll expand upon this next week from a strategy point of view. Some of the questions that I will introduce today will be used again next week for strategy. So when you see these questions, keep in mind that they'll be important and they can be game changers for you when you ask them. So what is this about at the end of the day, and something that you need to do for your team? It comes down to creating equitable opportunities of success. What does that mean? And really, we need to think about it within the context of quality and equity. So equality is the top of the mountain, right? Everybody, that could be their goal, a group of people, groups of people, that could be their goal to get to the top of the mountain. Let's say for a large group of people across many different dimensions, the goal is to become a director in a company or an executive, or to reach a certain level of compensation or satisfaction or time, family. These are all common goals that many of us aspire to achieve. And that is represented by the top of the mountain, getting to the top of the mountain. The equity side of the equation is really about the side of the mountain the person has to climb up. And what that means is that the top of the mountain is the same for everyone. The goal is the same, but the side of the mountain that we are given to climb up could be very different. And this is a symbolism for the problems each of us might be facing and how that can be different at an individual level. And also for different groups of people in, let's say, underrepresented groups, how they might face challenges that many people in leadership have not had to face and therefore don't understand. And especially when you work in a global organization, this can vary tremendously by groups that traditionally have held the power dynamic and those groups that have not. So from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint, this is a main understanding as something to strive towards and to really get to know your team members and understand the obstacles that they're facing so that you can help them get to that goal, help them to get that equitable opportunity. And it can be part of a DEI program, or it doesn't have to be. It can be represented through underrepresented groups or in other areas. But regardless of those situations and at an individual level, it is important for us as leaders to understand the challenges our team members are facing, to help them to gain equity in the pursuit of that same goal many of us strive towards. So how do we do that? We really need to understand those obstacles that are impacting the success of our team members. And essentially, and ideally, you've been creating some level of a relationship and trust with your team members, and the empowerment things we talked about earlier help to establish those. And then asking the right types of questions to unearth those challenges. And in addition to that kind of context, the environment in which to do it, it's usually better to ask questions that I'm going to suggest be asked, to be done in like an informal environment. And I know during the pandemic, it could be hard to say to somebody, hey, let's go grab lunch outside of the office. You might not be in the office, but perhaps an alternative version of things are virtual is, allow the person to order in lunch and expense it and have kind of like a lunch meeting virtually. Or sometimes I know some managers and employees will meet up for lunch if that's possible, even if an actual office is not being utilized. But the point is, if you can do this within an informal environment, the reason for doing that is it kind of strips away some of the structure and the power of being in that office environment, and lessens a little bit of the power dynamic that you might have as a leader, and that gets implied on the team member that you're working with, and creates more of that like safe environment to understand some of the challenges that your team members are facing, and let them know why you want to do the meeting. You can say to them, I really would like to just have an informal chat about some of the challenges that you might be facing so that I can better understand them and ideally create a better experience for you and help you to achieve the goals that you want to do. That's one of my responsibilities as your manager. So what does this mean? Let's say, you have that level of the relationship, there's enough of that trust there, or perhaps this exercise can actually start to build more of that trust. What are the right questions to ask? You're going to see some words in here that are very purposeful. Like you're going to see the word role or roles. And really the emphasis is on the role or the roles and not on specific individuals. So this isn't necessarily about resolving interpersonal challenges between people. It may come up. We're looking for more types of systemic challenges. And another benefit of focusing on the role and individual, it allows the person to give you answers that in a way that don't seem reflected or reflective of you as an individual. So there's a difference between me asking a team member, do you have any feedback for me? Versus, do you have any feedback for someone in my role? See, it kind of takes a little bit of the edge off. And that's the purpose of asking the questions in these ways. So first question, do you feel like you can be successful? So important word here is feel. Like some people's perceptions versus realities are important. Emotions drive a lot of things, even things like time quality and productivity. So understanding if they feel like they can be successful, and it's purposely a yes or no answer. You just maybe they'll give you a certain degree at some point, but this can help to open up the conversation, and then understanding the reasons why, why that might be the case. And it's going to be your job here to expand upon these questions and get detail and to work to understand the reasons behind the level of success, or if they feel they could be successful or not. And then starting to ask more of the specific questions. So about your role, how does someone in your role make it harder for the person on your team to do their job? So, and this gives the person an opportunity to discuss about the person at your role, not necessarily you. And then the question's asked again, but this time instead of harder, it's easier. And we're really looking to understand if the role you perform is causing some of those obstacles or provide providing a path through some obstacles. And then we ask the question a little bit more broadly. So outside of your role to other roles. So how do other roles make it harder for you to do your job? So here we're looking to assess more widely what like some of the obstacles might be, whether it's processes or roles. And then the same question asking about how it could possibly make it easier, how certain roles can make it easier. And some of the things that you may uncover could actually be around how the person identifies themselves, whether that's through race, gender, religion, sexual orientation. You may start to uncover that some of the challenges that they're facing are in these areas. And these types of questions may unearth that, or they may unearth more functional types of business challenges. But this starts to create the opportunity to understand the business challenges, more of the identity challenges. And you really need to gauge as you're having the conversation if you should continue to ask certain questions. The other thing you need to consider is, does the approach align with any kind of policy that you may have in your organization, with the culture of the organization? And based upon what you uncover, if something needs to be resolved through a specific method or a specific policy, you need to ensure that you handle it in that way with whatever your company's governance is, and also with the permission of the person that you are working to create that equitable opportunity for success for. And so, for example, it could be you may uncover a people challenge, and that people challenge could be related, coupled with an identity challenge. So someone could feel that they didn't get an opportunity because of some language someone else expressed in regards to their identity. So you need to follow the proper methods that your company has in place to do that. And I would really ask the person if they were okay, if that was something that they were okay with you moving forward on. So if you uncover those types of challenges in this circumstance, I strongly recommend you follow the procedures that your company has in place with the permission of the person involved. If the types of challenges are more business and functional types of challenges, then you as a manager, as the leader, work to understand and get the detail on what those things are. And ultimately, you're taking the information that you're receiving, whether it's functional, personal, identity-based, and determining the adjustments that you're going to be making. And once you determine the adjustments, you need to go back to the person and let them know the path that you're going to consider and seek their feedback on that path before you start to execute it. And you don't necessarily have to come up with solutions to the challenges that they're expressing in that meeting, but let them know that you're going to take what they told you and come back to them with some courses of action that you think should be taken to try to resolve some of the obstacles that they're facing. So there's a few things here. You're asking somebody to open up about the obstacles that you're facing. You're using questions that give them the permission to talk about certain things in a more safe way, and ideally a more safe environment. Your team members knowing that you're willing to work to understand the challenge, these types of challenges that maybe they weren't inclined to tell others about. You'll establish more trust and credibility with your team members. And when you make the adjustments and decide to take action on them with their permission and getting their feedback, you're going to further develop that relationship and trust, which adds more and more to the motivation, the M part. And you're also supporting the accessibility part of their job by helping with the obstacles. This, as a manager, as a leader, is one of the greatest things that you can do for your team members. And your team members will respond to it and work for you in ways and higher levels of motivation, and also higher levels of accessibility that you weren't able to get before. So I ended with this one this week because of the sensitivity of it and the importance of it, and also enabling you to have the tools to possibly approach this last technique. And if you have questions on this one or any of the other techniques and habits for the week or throughout the program, join the group sessions or use the micro chat format that I have to ask the question, and we can have a conversation back and forth. So just like every other day, we are concluding the session today with an action item to practice this. And this is a short form. So it takes you through a hypothetical circumstance with potentially someone and the things that you might do. And then, of course, it's good to practice, but if you really want the habit to stick, you need to apply it, right? So how can you take in totality or partially what you've learned today and apply it to an immediate circumstance? Perhaps you have relationships with your team members where you can have these kinds of conversations and have them, or ask them if they'd be open to having a conversation to understand maybe some of the challenges that they're facing that they haven't articulated to you yet. That could be a way to gauge if your team members are ready to have this conversation with you. All right, so week 2, where we are done. We focused on 5 ways, 5 habits to form team empowerment. And what is the major takeaway here? Similar to last week about leadership and what leadership is, this time focusing on our people. And it's the ability to motivate others, our people, to help realize our targeted outcomes and make those outcomes in terms of targeted outcomes for themselves and collectively as a group, which are usually our outcomes as leaders, more probable, more accessible, and enabling that consistent outcome to happen. All right, so what happened this week? The first session for day 1 of this week, it was all about expectation setting, like not what the right expectations are, but are we communicating expectations consistently? Are we using those communications and expectations to constantly align our team members and ourselves to the right thing? Then we talked about this concept of being direct versus empathetic and realizing it's a combination of both. So the act of communicating the expectations consistently in that alignment is a form of being direct. And when expectations aren't met, we use empathy and understanding of why it didn't happen, not as an excuse, and we return to being direct to let the person know that what the expectation still is, but we will work together to see if there's ways to help the person meet those expectations. And that you can bring in a little bit of number 5 here to help to understand that, as well as number 3. We talked about advising and consulting. So 2 methods for solutioning when somebody on your team has a challenge or an opportunity that they're bringing to you. You can either tell them what you would do in the circumstance, or you could ask the right questions to help them to come to an answer. And what should the default approach be? What are the pros and cons? And also simply just asking what the team member would prefer in a specific circumstance in terms of the type of solutioning method that they would need in that moment. On the 4th day, we talked about contributions, specifically to vision and strategy and decision making. And this is all about the team feeling like they're in control of their professional destiny as part of the team, and they're contributing to something maybe beyond their scope and helping to set the direction. Or at a minimum, being able to communicate the feedback on a direction that has been set, and also providing you with the opportunity to take that feedback to perhaps make the vision or the strategy more effective, or in a case where the vision and the strategy can't be changed at that point, at least you've communicated it to the team ideally before it has been set in stone, so that they're getting a preview and they feel like that they're having the opportunity to at least communicate their feedback on it, if that feedback can't even be used. But that simple act of giving the opportunity to talk about it, again, helps to build trust and relationships and motivation. And if you can move beyond the minimum of that, it also helps to create ownership of that vision and strategy, because team members are making contributions to it. And then today, understanding obstacles. So looking at equality and equity and how they work together. Equality is the goal that everyone is striving for, and equity is the challenges that each member of your team faces. And those challenges could be at an individual level, it could be at a group level. And you as a team member, especially if you're in a global team and all the different contexts that may have across different groups, understanding how to uncover what those challenges are in order to create that equitable opportunity of success. So this week we focus all on our team and empowering our team. The first week we focus all on our own empowerment and that foundation of us as a leader, and that control and mastering of our destiny and commitments, and what motivation and accessibility means for ourselves, and importance of habits and reliability and probability, and how that over the long haul gives us what we need to do as leaders to be successful. Well, next week we're going to move on to empowerment to talk about setting the right target. And we're going to get into more functional areas of leadership in terms of like the mechanics of it, to make sure that when you're applying these motivations and working to make things more accessible, you're directing them towards the things that are most likely to drive success. And we'll talk about how to leverage in motivation and accessibility in that strategy that you put together and its execution, so that ideally you're going to be exceeding expectations consistently. So I'm really looking forward to next week. I'll see you then. Until then,